Welcome, everybody, to Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick, Igniting Leadership Excellence. This is season 3, episode number 55. And today our guest is Robin Baker. We'll be reading her bio here shortly. I'm Rick, and this is my co host, Emily.
Hi.
Now, you don't have to be a firefighter to listen to this podcast. We know that we have people who are not firefighters that listen, although probably our largest audience is fire related, but we do have people that are not even in emergency services that listen in here. So, with that being said, today our guest is Robin Baker, a Society of Human Resources Managers certified HR professional. She is a certified trainer through the Bob Pike Group and a certified facilitator for Working Genius. Robin specializes in working with nonprofits, ministries, and small businesses because she truly understands the unique challenges they face. And I asked Robin to come on after a conversation with her last month because of her HR perspective, so we could talk about leadership and culture from that angle. So, with that said, Robin, welcome to Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's our pleasure.
Yeah. So let's just dive right on in. Robin, can you start by sharing your journey in human resources and how it has shaped your perspective on leadership and culture within organizations?
Sure. Well, I started out in HR many years ago. I was actually a receptionist at a call center
Hmm.
and sat outside. My desk was right outside of the human resources manager's office. And she and I, got along really well. And she understood that I had an interest in learning. And so she started sharing with me and kind of mentoring me. And that gave me an opportunity to really learn what HR was all about. And so I became her assistant and then later became an HR associate here in Loveland when we moved here. And it was a nonprofit, a 501c4, which is for the public welfare. It was within the utility industry. And I got an opportunity to see that work. It's a little different than private work. And
Wow.
then we had about 200 employees in a couple of different states, and then got the opportunity to be the human resources director for Boys and Girls Clubs of Larimer County for several years, and then moved over to Northern Water for a couple of years until I went out on my own. And so I've had the opportunity to be in private and public and nonprofits over the years and to see how culture is so important. It really
Mhm.
dictates a lot of things. Your retention, it
Yeah.
dictates the employee engagement, and really the outcomes and outputs for whoever your stakeholder is, whether it's a customer or Boys and Girls Clubs as with the kids and families, and having a good culture in those instances. That in turn, the employees provide just a better service for
Mhm.
Yeah.
the customer or stakeholder, whoever that is. And so it just really drives everything. And so culture is super important to me on
Yeah,
that front.
yeah, that's good. Culture. I've looked at culture for a number of years in different organizations, and particularly in the fire world. And it could be, depending on the organization, it could be good or it could be bad. And I've even seen that uh, within a department, one shift could have a really lousy culture, and the other two shifts could have a good culture.
Hmm.
And it's amazing, how that can happen, even station to station. I mean, there's been some things recently in the national news, in particular coming out of Florida, is the one that I'm thinking about, where there's a really, allegedly, I'll use the word allegedly, a toxic culture that has existed within the organization that has, as you're well aware, where does that go?
Yeah.
It goes legal.
Yeah.
And it turns into lawsuits. But that
Mhm.
Robin, you're certified Bob Pike Group and Working Genius. Could you tell our audience what that is, what both of those are?
Yes, absolutely. So the Bob Pike Group is one of the top training organizations for trainers.
Hmm.
So I didn't get to go this past year, but the year before I got to go to their conference in Minneapolis, which is where they are located. And people from all over the country come in all different industries, but
Hmm.
trainers, or some specifically were HR professionals and others were just part of the training and development departments for organizations. And so they provide a certificate for delivery of training. They have several different ones, but the one that I have is for delivery of training, and just really work with trainers on how to make it more engaging and using the psychology and research to help it stick, because we've all been in those trainings where you sit there and somebody talks at you with these PowerPoints that have a million words on it that you're never going to read,
Yep.
and your mind just wanders and you walk out and you're like, I don't even know what that was about, right?
Yeah. And then you have to
And
give like a
you never
report
do
to your
anything
boss
with it.
about what you learned, and it's like, shoot.
It's like, I don't have any idea. Yeah, exactly. And that's when you like memorize the little blurb that they tell about it so you can
Mhm.
kind of quote that and just tell people this is what I learned about.
Yep.
And so I do believe I love giving trainings and being in front of people and working with them on different things, seeing that like light bulb moment when they grasp that concept, and then being able to see them put it to use in their day to day. And so I was became a trainer with them. I went to they have a train the trainer boot camp, and I started there and then went to their conference and became certified. And so then Working Genius is kind of goes hand in hand with that. It's more of a like facilitation. And Working Genius was created by Patrick Lencioni and his team at the Table Group. And the overall overarching thing to it is everyone has parts of work that are there, what we call their geniuses. There are essentially they've decided discerned that there are 6 steps anything you do, whether it's planning a family vacation, maybe planning an event at work, a big project you have, maybe it's a new product launch. And those are just briefly wonder, which is somebody has to think, oh, I wonder how we can make this better. Or I wonder why this is this way. Is that the right way to do things? Then you have to have invention. Someone has to hear that wonder and go, oh, well, we could do it this way. We could fix it this way. We could create this product to solve that problem, something like that. Then you have to have discernment, someone to discern whether or not that is a good idea. This is a person that has more of a natural gifting. It's not necessarily based on data. It's based on that gut feeling where they hear it and the first thing they think of is, oh, but have we thought about this? Have we thought about this?
Mhm.
Um, and then you have, once you've made that decision that this is the invention you're going, the route you're going, then you've got to have galvanizing, the person that gets everybody on board. Not just a cheerleader, though. This is they're rallying the troops to get, hey, you're really good at this. Could you get this part taken care of? We need this done. Can you get this done? Because we're going to need this. And then you have to have enablement. Enablement, there's, a negative connotation around that word. However, the in this instance, it's really the doers, the busy bees that really just they don't want to come up with the ideas. And we all know someone like that, if you say, hey, I need this done and I need it done in this way, they're like, I'll do it. exactly how you want it. Just tell me exactly what you want.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that get things done, right?
Mhm.
And so then you have tenacity. You have to have someone that's wanting to check things off their list. They're not going to be able to sleep until it's finished. So if you have an event, they're going to make sure that everything is in place to, cross the finish line. Sometimes they will even sound like a galvanizer, even if that's not part of their genius,
Mhm.
because they are saying, hey, have we got this finished? Have we got this taken care of? We got to get this done by this time. And so everyone has two of those as a genius. What I
Mhm.
mean by that is tasks that fall in those areas are going to be very exciting for you, and they energize you. And so
Uh-huh.
we all have something where we're sitting there in part of our work, and it's like, if I could do this all day long, at the end of the day, you're like, I can't wait back to get back to here tomorrow and do it again. You could do it for days on end and just be super excited about it and energized. And, the
Yeah.
day just flies by, and you're like, oh, how did I just spend 8 hours doing that?
Yeah.
Then everyone has two of them as competencies. You don't love it, you don't hate it. So a lot of times you'll become good at it because you don't mind doing it. So people that don't want to do it will ask you to do it. And so we find that out a lot is people will think, oh, that must be one of my geniuses. And then they realize it's not because it doesn't give them the energy. It
Mm.
just is something they don't necessarily mind taking on.
Yeah.
And so, but eventually it's going to drain them. And so
Mhm.
they are going to burn out if they spend too terribly much time in that. And then
Yeah.
finally, everyone has two frustrations, meaning that it drains them of energy. The idea of doing it is draining. And so if they spend really very much time at all in that, then they are just drained. The best illustration that I can think of that really gives that like aha moment that Patrick Lencioni talks about is a coffee cup. If you have a coffee cup, like say like your Stanley or thermos or whatever that keeps, do people use thermoses anymore? Like keeps it hot.
Yes.
They pour their coffee in there and that's going to stay hot all day, maybe even 2 or 3 days, right? That's your genius. That coffee is your energy and you are just like steaming hot, ready to go. Your competencies are like pouring it in a regular coffee cup. It keeps it hot for a little while,
Yeah.
but eventually it starts to cool down.
Like mine right
And
now.
then, yeah, exactly. And then your frustrations are like pouring it. You're just pouring that into a cup with a hole in the bottom. And
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
draining right out. And so I love that visual because it's really easy to go, oh, yeah, that is, I understand that. You can almost probably, you've probably already thought of things as I was talking that you're like, yep, that is me pouring it in a cup with a hole in the bottom. Or, yeah,
Yeah.
that's me pouring it in a cup that a Stanley or a thermos. So, um, I will go in and facilitate those. There's an assessment you can take, and then I facilitate with the teams I give them a map to show where everybody falls in that. And so we can see if their team is missing something, say they're missing tenacity, and we see that on paper, then they say, oh, that is why at the end of every project, we start struggling to make deadlines and they start off strong. And we've all seen that in teams where, the team will start off strong and
Uh-huh.
they get it really going and then they just really start dying off. And
Mhm.
it's more of like you're having to pull things out of that team to get it done.
Hmm.
Yeah.
They're probably missing somebody with tenacity because that person's in there going, hey, to the enablement people, hey, do we have this done? Do we have that? And I've had a team that was missing, the only thing they were missing was galvanizing. And you need galvanizers to be, hey, let's get this done. Keep everybody it fresh in everybody's mind and excited about that idea. And three of them, it was a team of four, three of them had it in their frustration, which is never good because that means they don't want to ever do it. And then luckily it was the owner that had it in their competency because as the
Mhm.
owner, they are the one and leader. They have to be the ones. They have to have that, right? And they have to do it.
Yeah.
And so at least it was in her competency, but it's not something that's sustainable for a long time. And so we
Yeah.
talked about how the best way to treat that is to try to pull it from other places. Galvanizing is one, so she's asked if I would stop by occasionally, um, but also having when we're hiring next, right? We're going to ask specific questions. We're going
Mm,
to make sure we tailor the job posting to highlight those pieces that would naturally draw in someone that is excited about galvanizing, and we're going to ask questions to pull out whether or not they're a galvanizer, and then share with them transparently. This is a framework that we use, and explain it to them briefly, and just say, this person is going to be doing XYZ a lot. And if that sounds exhausting to you, this may be the wrong job for you.
yeah.
And so that's how I work with the working genius with teams.
Okay. All right. Yeah. See, in most fire departments, somebody gets hired in, unless it's at a upper chief level, like the fire chief or an assistant chief, possibly a training chief. Everybody starts at the bottom, at a recruit. Yeah, and you're riding backwards on the rig. And then as you move up, and I'll use myself as an example, move up when I was promoted to battalion chief, then it becomes, it's your turn to be the training chief, which I like to train. I like to develop content. I like to teach, but I did not like being the training chief because it was a lot of admin work, a lot of admin work. And then during my tenure as a training chief, we got hit with a major flood here in northern Colorado,
Hmm.
and our training area was underwater. And then, so that really curtailed a lot of our training down there. And I turned into more of a general contractor. I felt like, and in fact, that's not my wheelhouse. My wheelhouse was either teaching, being in front of people, or being back on shift, as the shift commander. And yeah, you talk about a hole in the bottom of your coffee cup. There was no bottom in that coffee cup, for me. And I did not like it. And so this is an issue that many fire departments face. Is it's rotation. Hey,
Right.
it's your turn. You're being rotated into that, and lots of times it doesn't play out well. Military is the same way for somebody who's going to be career.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you for explaining that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I love that concept because I was thinking about, I literally was telling someone the other day that's like, I'm really good at coming up with ideas. It's the implementing part that I'm not good at.
Yeah, I'm an inventor galvanizer. And so I feel your pain on that. I said my craft room downstairs is it definitely shows that I'm an inventor galvanizer because I come up with 1,000 ideas that so many I can't even get out. And then I have them started down there. I'm able to like kind of galvanize myself and get myself energized to get it like started.
Yeah.
But getting that like over the finish line. So I tell people I have a hobby of collecting items for hobbies um, because but once I took my assessment and realized that, I was like, it completely made sense, and
Yeah.
it helped me understand why that things show up the way they do for me. And
Yeah.
so, if I can help others to find that out about them, it helps in your personal life. My husband's done his assessment and, worked with couples that have done their assessment so they can understand each other too, and worked with teams where, hey, maybe we need to move some things around, some tasks around so
Yeah.
that this team works more they can work really well as a well-oiled machine. Maybe you're not in the right position, or maybe it's just that these tasks that kind of got thrown onto your position because they didn't go anywhere. Maybe they
Mhm.
need to be moved over here to this person that will get energy out of that. And maybe they
Yeah.
have something that drains them that you could take on. And then you get teams that can work just so much more cohesively. Even if
Yeah.
they were already working pretty well together, you can usually find ways to help that. And then you at least have a common language as well. If you know that, hey, I can't take this off my plate, but it's in my frustration, for one, you can name that and not have to dread doing it, you can just say, okay, I'm going to go in some focused time and say, maybe you tell everybody, hey, I'm going to go into this conference room and lock myself in for a little bit because I know that I will, if I get distracted, I will stop doing it because it's not in my genius.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to go focus and get it done, right? And you can say, name
Yeah.
that. I'm going in there and I'm working on my frustration. I just need to get it done. And it just, like I said, it gives everybody common language and a way to
Yeah.
talk to each other better, which helps with that culture, right? If you talk to me, if you have a different genius than me and you talk to me in a way that makes sense to you, because say enablement and tenacity is yours, well, they're my competencies, but they're not my genius. And if you talk to me in that, it talk to me in a way that would make sense to you because of that, I may completely lose the
Yeah.
meaning behind what you're wanting done,
Yeah. Like
right? But if you know that, hey, this is an inventor and a galvanizer, so these are the things that energize her, this is how her brain works. Maybe it's just about choosing the language and the verbiage that you're going to use sometimes. And so I help teams with that talk. I talk
yeah.
to them about their just how they show up
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
team member because of that.
Are
Yeah.
are you familiar with emergenetics?
I have heard, I don't know a lot about it, but I have heard of it.
Back in 2008, I had the opportunity to attend. It was called the Rocky Mountain Program. It's government leadership program through CU Denver. And prior to that, we were all given the emergenetics assessment, and it looks at our individual thinking styles. And
Mm,
there's four of them: conceptual. See if I can get these right: conceptual, structured, analytical, and social. The
mm,
those
mm-hmm,
those four right there. And there's like 150 questions, and it's validated every year, if I recall what they were saying. And so
mm,
we did that in the very first full day of the seminar. One of the developers taught that. And I will always remember, and what you were saying about communicating with somebody, correctly, and how they think, is he put up, and we had people from all different departments in there. There was only three of us, from fire from around the country and some law enforcement, but we had a lot of people from IT, finance, public works, so forth like that. He put up this slide on the screen of a spreadsheet, a financial spreadsheet. And he asked who was the financial people in the room. There were about four people. And he said, is this what you take to your department heads, to your city or county manager, to your elected officials when you're explaining the budget? And they all said, absolutely, that's what we do. Then he put up another slide. It was an 8.5 by 11 piece of lined paper with a starting number with subtractions. And he said, how many of you in the room run your budget this way? And I was in charge of the wildland program then. And I was one of them that stuck my hand up. And it's like, that's how I was running my budget. I knew what I had. I had a starting number and I was running it like a checkbook. And the point he was making, uh, back to the finance people, is did you see how many people in this room do not understand what you understand? And you lose them. You're losing them in the first few minutes. And all they're
mm-hmm.
hearing is blah, 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 blah. And then you wonder why you can't get anything done.
Hmm.
Yeah, I've used that same kind of instance as an example with people. I have in the past run several internship programs. I love working with interns, and one of the things I try to remind managers that are supervising interns is it's more work to have an intern. This is not somebody to do all your grunt work. And
Yeah.
it is, right? They're here to learn. This is an
Yeah.
extension of their learning, and we need to do that. And one of the things that I always require is that they spend some time with other departments that they have to work with in their role.
Mm.
And um, uh, two or three different times I've had finance interns. And that was one of the things that I required is, okay, they need to sit down with, obviously, finance works with pretty much every department. So that's not necessarily feasible, but they need to work with several different types of departments. So you've got your maybe boots on the ground, more manual labor type employees. They need to sit with them because they're going to think differently and understand things differently
Mhm.
Yeah.
than maybe an engineer who is going to have maybe a little bit
Yeah.
more more into that their numbers, right? And so
Uh,
being helping them learn how to have those conversations with people is so important as they grow, especially if they become a leader later, because you do have to be able to have a better understanding of how the person you're talking to thinks.
Yeah.
And I
yeah.
think in business, we don't always do that. We have a tendency to, we want to talk in the acronyms that everybody in our world understands. We
So
want
true.
to and use our jargon, right?
Yeah.
And that is okay if I'm talking to another HR person or the finance person is talking to another finance person. But once you step out of that, then you've got to be able to find ways to talk to them in their language.
Me.
And
Yeah.
it helps so much.
Yeah.
We were talking about culture. It people get it helps those departments just see each other better and work so much better together if they can understand what each other's saying and not being frustrated all the time.
Yeah.
Because, if they show you that finance sheet, which is very different than the way you were doing your budget, right? Then you're going to be frustrated because you don't know exactly what they're showing you. They're frustrated because you're not understanding what they're saying, and it just causes a rift in there.
Mhm.
Well, sometimes
Yeah.
even in the same profession, even at the same line, going to another part of the country, language can change.
Hmm.
Last May, I had the opportunity to do my my class on decision making, situational awareness down in Eastern North Carolina. And on one of the breaks, one of the chiefs came up to me and he was telling me about a situation that he had faced in a neighboring community on a fire. And it was a frustrating situation for him. And he was telling me about this, and he said, "Yeah," he said, "we had a fire in the Frog." And my brain now is trying, of course, I think, "You mean the frog was on fire?" And he mentioned it again. He said, "Yeah," he says, "the fire was in the Frog." And I said, "Excuse me." I said, "What's the Frog?" And he looked at me cockeyed and he says, "It's the front room over the garage. What do you all call it?" I said, "Front room over the garage." So, we're both
Wow.
firefighters, but separated by 1,800 miles and
Mhm.
just even that language. But yeah, Emily had a question there for Robin.
Yeah. So when it comes to like cultivating a positive organizational culture, what would you say are probably like maybe like your top three or four, depending on how you can narrow it down, like practical and effective solutions that you've seen work in organizations?
Yeah, that's a great one. I think that eludes people a lot. And sometimes we really try to overthink things and
Mhm.
analyze things and come up with these fancy ways to do things. And I think first of all, it starts at the top. It
Yeah.
always starts at the top.
Yeah.
And I have seen leaders that don't quite grasp that. And so they think, we'll put these values on the wall, for example, and these are the things that, these are our values, but then they don't necessarily live by that.
Right. Yeah.
And they're like, well, that doesn't apply to me. Well, if you think it doesn't apply to you, you've just shown everybody below you that you don't necessarily, you don't find yourself as peers for one. And while there is, always a hierarchy, right? But as far as business wise, the leader should always treat everyone as a peer. And
Hmm.
I don't care if it's the janitor or a bus driver or the, vice president of finance, right? They should show that it matters and that they matter, that goes a long way, is just having the integrity to follow the same guidelines that you put out for everyone. And that is seen quickly. And that really sets a tone for a team or in a whole organization. And earlier we talked about how, you can see like on the different shifts, how the cultures are different or different departments. And that's because each of those shifts and each of those departments has their own leader within that, right? And it's how they are creating their culture.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
if you come in and they come in and they're like, "Oh yeah, we've got to get the bathrooms cleaned," and they go and get it done. They're like, "Oh, you take care of that and I'll go get this done." That says something to their subordinates, and they automatically gained some respect that someone else that acts like that's not their job has. They're not going to have that same respect, and that goes a long way to culture, having that
Yeah.
respect. And so, do I think that they should always be the person to do those things? No, obviously there are other people that probably um, can do that. The CEO of a company can't always go and, clean up the bathroom for everybody, right? They have other probably really important things to do. However, if they have free time and they're able to go in and help, maybe clean up after an event or things that aren't really their job, is huge. And
Mhm.
and living out, like I said, the values. These aren't just things that you stick on a wall. They're not just words. They're
Mhm.
if you want all of your people to live out those values, then you have to live them out first.
Yeah. Yep.
And
Absolutely.
that I think is one of the most important practical and simple. I don't want to use the word easy because sometimes it's not easy because you have
Yeah.
to be very intentional and you have to really, you may have to change the way you do things a lot depending on where you are,
Mhm.
that you can make sure that you're doing it properly, right?
Yeah.
But it's a very simple thing that if we put the word integrity on the wall as a value, then I need to show integrity. And then in turn, everybody else is going to show. The leaders below me are going to show integrity. And
Yeah.
then it's really easy to suss out someone that doesn't have that integrity and just then you have to call it out. You can't just ignore it. That's another one that will kill culture. You've
Yeah.
probably seen it a lot. I know I
Yep.
have, where it's just somebody does something and you're like, what is going on with that? And they're like, oh, that's just how they are.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's not just how they are. That's what I always say is like, maybe it is, but that's not how we are. So we need
Yeah.
to go to them and correct that. What you don't correct, you condone.
Mm.
And
Yep.
Yeah.
the second they're not corrected on it, they are, they feel like it's okay. And then one day you're fed up with it and you come in and you're ready to terminate them and they have no idea why. They're completely confused
Mm.
because you never told them that it was wrong. And that's the way you keep that because morale among employees, when they see, it goes down when they see that other employees aren't held to the same standard.
Yep. You're
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. And the culture issue, and and I saw it change in our department here. And there was totally different cultures across the shifts. I mean, it was really a mess. And then we had a fire chief and you used the word galvanized. And he came in from the outside, and essentially he said, "This is going to change." And he implemented change, and it was painful for some people, but for a lot of us it was like, hallelujah, finally
Hmm.
we got somebody at the top that is going to hold everybody accountable for this. And
Absolutely.
so it did change. It didn't happen overnight, it didn't happen in 6 months, but it did change. And
Yeah.
then us as the battalion chiefs, the shift commanders in our department, and we only had one battalion chief, and so you had one shift commander. Then it fell on us to make sure that the people on our shifts were staying aligned with the culture of the fire department. However, sometimes I saw some things pop up above our rank in the upper chiefs where I felt that they were failing to recognize what you just mentioned is that the shift is going to take on certain characteristics of the battalion chief. It's inevitable, and it's not that we were doing anything against the culture of the organization. It's related to the fact that we have our own personalities and we have
Hmm.
our own styles, and we weren't doing anything wrong, and we weren't doing anything to overthrow, the fire department administration. But it's tough. It is tough to keep
Hmm.
all of that together, and
Yeah.
absolutely tough. So, Robin, a couple weeks ago, after Work Life Connect, you and I were talking, and Emily has seen this, and we've talked about it, because she worked at HR up at the city of Fort Collins, and it's this wall that gets built between HR and all the
Hmm.
worker bees, regardless
Yep.
of whether it's fire, police,
Yeah.
utility, whatever.
Right.
There seems like there's this inevitable wall, and it turns into an us versus them. You've been in
Hmm.
this line of work for a while. What are your recommendations from the HR side to tear down that wall so it's not an us versus them where it turns into a civil war?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. That is something that I see a lot. And um, the way that I work when I'm in an organization is and part of it is I'm a very relational person, and so and an extrovert. So I love meeting people and getting to know people. And so I have rarely worked at an organization where I didn't know someone. I knew I've been in organizations, I think about 200 is about the largest that I've worked in. And so, you get much larger than that. It's really, really hard to get to know people. But
Yeah.
I, I get, I find it important to get to know them. So, I'm out having lunch in the break room with them and getting, just sitting down with people and talking and getting to know them, genuinely know them. And I work hard to try to remember things so that, if they make a comment about, oh, this weekend I'm having a, birthday party for my elderly mother or whatever, oh, hey, how's that going? Or if they, mention in passing that, somebody's sick in their family, try to remember that and ask about that. Build the relationships. I
Hmm.
think that is so important because if I have a relationship with you and then I have to come and correct you on something, it's a lot easier and it feels a lot better because we can sit down in a little more comfortable environment and I can just be like, "Hey,
Mhm.
what's going on? What, um, I know that, our policy states this, and I found that this happened against that policy. Can you talk to me about what's going on?" And it's a little easier because they feel more comfortable.
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah.
want to be, I want to be approachable when they are coming to me maybe about a situation that they're concerned about. Maybe they've had a situation with their supervisor, something like that. And they just don't know who to turn to. I want them to feel comfortable coming to me about that. I want them to feel comfortable talking to me about whatever. And to do that, they have to have that relationship. And so, for example, a lot of the organizations that I work with as a consultant, because we're working with small businesses, and a lot more, I guess, on the blue collar side of things. So if I walk in there in a business suit and have a business suit and a, briefcase, and that is just not going to be as approachable.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And so I'm not. I'm going to walk in jeans. I'm going to look nice and still professional enough. but I'm going to be in, jeans and I'm carrying a backpack with, my stuff in it. I'm going to, have my hair in a ponytail maybe and just be more, um, just more approachable, right? I think that is so important. I have seen HR people that I guess are more of the, they like the like policies, they like the processes, they like
Mhm.
Yeah.
the rule following things. And that's what I think a lot of people see in HR or picture them is that they're just like the policy police.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
You
um
just go there because you're in trouble.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. And I do think that, right, it is my role to mitigate any kind of any kind of risk that I
Hmm.
can for an organization. That is, I'm there to make sure that we're compliant with the with everything. I'm there to create the policies and help with that. However, I'm also there to advocate for the employees. Make sure that they are treated properly.
Yeah.
Make sure that they are not being subject to harassment. Make sure that they are not being discriminated against. And um, just, make sure that they are taken care of as well and being treated well. And so, to kind of go back to that where we were talking about like engagement and culture and creating that culture, one of the biggest culture killers is going to be the the management not really taking care of their employees. What I mean by that is like trying to get the bare minimum on pay and or even just like if you have a salaried exempt employee and you are trying to manage every second of their time and it's like watching the clock, oh, you're squeaking it's a minute past and you're just or no, you don't need I know that you don't you worked extra yesterday, but you can't leave early today to go to the dentist or take your
Mhm.
kid to the go see your kid's soccer game
Yeah.
is being just making sure that they understand that we don't need to treat employees like that. That's going to kill the culture, that's
Yeah.
going to kill the morale, and that's going to cause turnover.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it's my role to advocate for those employees and say, hey, you know, what is the real problem with them leaving early if they don't have have
Right.
something to do and they worked late last night and I've seen this in the past where someone actually was they printed a report. We had unlimited PTO is what they call it for exempt employees. And this person was not really thrilled with that idea in the first place. And they printed a report and they were like, so and so has taken this many days off. And I was like, okay. And they were like, well, these other people haven't hardly taken any time off. And I was like, but it's available to all of them. That's really on them. And maybe their supervisor needs to go to them and encourage them to take some time off to refresh and not not just stay all the time.
Yeah.
But also, I looked at the person that she commented on and I said, looked at their supervisor. I said, how's her work, this person's work doing? And she said, it's fine. Has she missed any deadlines? No. Are is everything that she works on like up to date and is she on top of it? Absolutely. Is there anything she's missing? No. Okay, then I don't care. If if you can get the work done in 20 hours,
Hmm.
good on you. Now, maybe you don't have enough on your plate. If you get always get your work done in 20 hours, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we need to find some other things that you can be helpful with. But just being there to kind of advocate for those employees and make sure that everyone is is getting what they need, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that, advocating for the employees. One of the things that I've seen that has created, uh, and we're coming up here on our time. We're going to have to wrap up here in a couple more minutes. I know Emily's got another question for you. But one of the things where I've definitely seen has created animosity is the inability for people to act like adults and take care of it between themselves without running to HR.
Hmm.
And point being is that, without divulging the particular situation, unfortunately, it did not happen on my shift, but subject A made a comment to subject B that could have been handled right then and there in the fire station by subject B addressing it and saying, "Hey, I don't," and it wasn't a male female, it was two men, is, "Hey, I don't appreciate what you said," but it didn't happen that way. Subject B goes to HR, straight to HR, and files, you know, a complaint, which initiates an investigation, which turns into subject A getting disciplined. And then all of us pay the price, because now it's because one guy says something that now all of us have to go through a remedial training, one of those threat trainings, if you say this, you do this, blah, 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 you're going to get written up, you're going to get fired, you're going to get sued and stuff like that. And that was that type of garbage that I saw that really just created even more animosity between the people, especially the people on the line, and human resources. It's this knee-jerk legal reaction when, okay, if disciplinary action is warranted, then keep it there between them guys out there, and don't shove it down our throats again with another class because somebody said something that they shouldn't have said.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm a big advocate for doing some mediation with employees. Hey, you've come to me about this complaint. Let's sit down and talk. I'll be there and we can mediate that because depending on what they said, obviously, maybe there needed to be some disciplinary action. But yes, being able to learn to talk with one another. I think in our culture overall, everything's online now.
Yeah.
We've lost the ability to just have those conversations and
Yeah.
say, "Hey, what you said just bothered me. Do you realize
Mhm.
that it bothered me?" Or, sometimes it's the person's just like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Didn't mean it that way. That was not my intent."
Yeah.
And then they're like, "Oh, next time I will not say it that way," because they know now that it
Right.
could be a problem, right? Or offensive. And
Hmm.
so,
Yep.
yeah, I do think
Yeah.
that sometimes we need to learn how to just talk to each other.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Communication. So, Rob,
Yeah.
as we wrap this up, if anybody out there who's listening is interested in learning
Mhm.
more about you or how you might help them, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Email is great. It's Robin at the hyphen people hyphen factor.com. And that is also my website. And then I take texts or phone calls at 970-541-9265.
Okay. All right. Well, Robin, thanks for coming on with
Yeah.
us today. And folks, if you've liked what you've heard, please press the like button and share. And my contact information and website and the services I provide are in the show notes as well. And I'll include Robin's contact information in the show notes. So for now, that's all. Until next time, we'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.